Hello, today I want to take us back 33 years to 1993 to a momental moment in time for people with diabetes. Front page story in the New York Times. Doctors announce way to forestall effect of diabetes. In what doctors termed the most important discovery for diabetics since insulin. Remember, insulin was 1921. Researchers said today that the devastating complications of the disease could be prevented or delayed. They said this was possible when diabetics closely monitored their blood sugar levels with a special meter throughout the day and injected themselves with insulin 4 to 7 times daily to keep their blood sugar at a near normal level. In current practice, most patients do not monitor their blood so closely and give themselves 1 or 2 doses of insulin a day, which allows their blood sugar to vary greatly. An estimated 14 million Americans have diabetes, the researchers said. And each year, tens of thousands of them go blind, lose their kidneys, or have feet amputated because of the disease. Most will probably now be advised to follow this new regimen, which may not only lengthen their lives and lessen their symptoms, but also reduce the nation's healthcare costs. Even though patients may pay more in routine treatment each year, long-term costs for complications and major related ailments will be significantly reduced, the researchers said. Major implications of this study. Now, I can say, yes, treating type 1 diabetes is expensive. I paid about $1,100 for the first bill of the year to cover the CGM and insulin supply costs for 3 months. So yeah, this is expensive for people, and I think it's well worth it because I want to prevent myself from going blind or having kidney disease. And I also do not want to only take care of my diabetes. I want to have a career, a family. So I need the technology to make it easier to manage blood sugar, and managing blood sugar is very, very difficult. Let's continue with this story from 33 years ago. The findings are from a research project described here today at the annual meeting of the American Diabetes Association. Financed by the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases, the project is the largest and most important study carried out in the history of diabetes, said the Institute's director, Dr. Philip Gordon. It has major implications for the nation's healthcare system. The discovery of insulin was an absolute miracle, Dr. Gordon said. This study is in the ballpark of comparison. Interesting that this study was 1993, and there's actually some studies done a few decades before that were coming with similar conclusions, but not as verifiable to change the whole industry of how to treat diabetes. And the article continues a little bit further on. The benefits were so striking that officials stopped the trial 1 year early so the findings could be announced and all diabetics could benefit from the findings, Dr. Gordon said. This really was groundbreaking, but the study itself was not without flaws, and there were other consequences. Now I'm going to quote from this amazing book, Rethinking Diabetes: What Science Reveals About Diet, Insulin, and Successful Treatments by Gary Taubes. There is so much in this book. It provides some background about this study. The study was called the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial, the DCCT, and it is famous because it really did change the approach to treating diabetes and it did cause a reduction in long-term complications, and it still continues to really help people with diabetes, whether you use an insulin pump or insulin injections. And one day soon, I'm really hoping there's going to be an insulin pill. There are people researching this, multiple scientists in different locations who are trying to create an insulin pill, which would really, really be beneficial. But today we do not yet have that. But this book here, Rethinking Diabetes, provides some background. In 1982, the NIH initiated the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial to establish the risks and benefits of tight blood sugar control, now informed by the use of self-blood glucose monitoring and hemoglobin A1C measurements. So yeah, that measuring your blood glucose now is extremely easy and cheap. If with a blood glucose meter, you can literally buy one for about $12. You do have to buy the glucose test strips, which are the recurring costs. And today we have even better technology. We have CGMs, and those are much more expensive, but it gives so much more information because rather than pricking your finger and seeing a moment in time with a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, you see the ups and downs throughout the day and continuous reading of what your blood sugar is, which then helps you with making changes to your diet and exercise and lifestyle. Okay, continuing from rethinking diabetes. What would be tested, though, was not the optimization of blood sugar control by manipulating insulin doses and diet, as Bernstein had done and the Rockefeller diabetologists had demonstrated was seemingly so beneficial, but by intensive insulin therapy alone. Specifically, the use of basal and bolus pre-meal insulin injections per Bernstein's protocol, or the use of an insulin pump. Both would be compared to the typical or standard treatment, which was still either one of 2 insulin shots a day or urine tests alone. Now, urine tests, we no longer rely on urine tests for showing you what your current blood glucose is, because urine tests do not show you your current blood glucose test. It reflects what your blood glucose was. So urine tests was what they had back then. Glucose, testing your glucose gives you much more real-time information. Both groups would eat a balanced diet, and the intensive insulin therapy group would adjust their doses to their diet as needed. They would not be counseled to reduce the carbohydrates they consumed so as to minimize the insulin required. So this is what you could say the big flaw of the study, is that they did not counsel patients to try to reduce their carbohydrates, and reducing carbohydrates means you need less insulin. They told people, oh, you can eat whatever you want. The clinical centers involved, 29 of the United States and Canada, could decide whatever methods of insulin delivery, diet, exercise, and patient self-monitoring could be employed, but the diet prescribed to the patients enrolled as subjects in the trial would be one that aligned with the ADA and AHA guidelines. The dietary goals would restrict fat consumption to minimize, so they're trying to do a diet that's going to minimize heart disease risk by focusing on reducing fats. That took precedence over restricting carbohydrate consumption to optimize or normalize blood sugar. For the DCCT protocol, as Peterson recalled, everybody was so intent on going along with the existing guidelines and not offending anybody that the part about restricting carbohydrates got taken out. And that actually caused some consequences. The DCCT put an end to the 70 years of debate about the value of glycemic control in patients with insulin-dependent diabetes, but it left plenty still open to controversy. In many ways, the study had failed to achieve its goals. Despite all the effort and guidance given to the patients, their blood sugar had remained high, averaging over 150 milligrams per deciliter, and often going as high as 200 milligrams per deciliter in the hours after breakfast. Only 1 in every 20 subjects on the intensive insulin therapy ever managed to get their blood sugar into a relatively healthy range, what the investigators had defined as a hemoglobin A1C percentage of 6.05 or below. Rather, the average for all the subjects was 7%, still in the range considered diabetic. Now, isn't it interesting that all they were able to achieve was 7%, and then that became the guideline, let's get your A1C under 7%. When you look at the studies of damage, like the damage to your eyes, you actually need a lower A1C than 7%, but that is extremely hard to achieve with a high carbohydrate diet and insulin because of the roller coaster and the difficulty of timing insulin to your meals when there's so many carbohydrates in those meals. The intensive insulin therapy also came with serious side effects, just as diabetologists had worried that it might. Weight gain was the immediate obvious one. As early as 1988, the DCCT investigators had reported that patients on intensive insulin therapy gained, on average, more than 11 pounds in just the first year of the trial. Patients receiving the standard therapy gained half as much. So more insulin without changing diet leads to weight gain. Both groups continued to gain weight over the course of the trial. After 5 years, the intensive therapy group averaged 10 pounds heavier, and they were significantly more likely to have become overweight or obese, both of which, as diabetologists had always known, are associated with the macrovascular complications of diabetes, heart disease in particular. So the weight gain can cause cardiovascular issues. What seemed surprising to the researchers is that the subjects in the trial got even fatter as the years went on, even as they were apparently eating less. As the patients gained weight, the dietitians with whom they worked so closely no doubt had counseled them to eat less, and yet that hadn't stopped the weight gain. In 1988, the DCCT researchers had concluded that further study was necessary to determine if it was possible to improve glycemic control in diabetic patients, particularly those on intensive insulin therapy, without undesirable weight gain. Right. So that is the problem with administering insulin for anything you eat and not trying to reduce those carbohydrates so that you only need a minimum amount of insulin to keep your blood glucose in range. There's no doubt that keeping your blood glucose in range is important. Diet changes are also important. Dr. Richard K. Bernstein, who is famous for his approach to diabetes, his very, very low carb approach to diabetes, he's the author of Diabetes Solution, was interviewed in July of 1993 for the New York Times about this study. The headline said, "Vindication for a diabetes expert." However, he pointed out the flaw. He said, those in the study followed some version of a high carbohydrate diet and used large doses of insulin, he said, while our regimen for type 1 insulin dependent diabetes is for a very low carbohydrate diet and very small doses of insulin, because insulin does not work as fast as carbohydrate in affecting blood sugar. And when you get large amounts of both, you get big deviations from a level blood sugar. So yeah, you get that roller coaster when you don't get the timing right. You take the insulin, you eat the food, but maybe the insulin hits first and you go low, or maybe the food hits first, which is very common, especially if it's refined carbohydrates, high amount of carbohydrates, especially in a meal that doesn't also have fat and protein. The carbohydrates quickly raise blood sugar and insulin takes longer. This is external insulin you're giving yourself. It does not work as quickly as somebody who is producing insulin from their pancreas. There's a physiological difference there, which makes it extremely challenging to eat a regular, in quotes, a regular diet. I would say the American diet, the standard American diet, is very high in carbohydrates. Especially breakfasts are often very high in carbohydrates. Cereal, pancakes, donuts, all those muffins, all those things, coffee with creamer and sugar in it, all those things have a large amount of carbohydrates. And between all those carbohydrates for breakfast plus your natural rise in blood sugar that happens in the morning from the hormone cortisol, increases in the morning, keeping your blood sugar in range, especially in the morning, is very difficult. So that's why I'm a big advocate of adding protein to your diet. And in fact, some days I have a breakfast that doesn't have any carbohydrates whatsoever. So I believe that if people are educated with how all this works, that a lot of people will choose a lower carbohydrate diet, because it is what makes your life easier when you have to give yourself insulin. It makes your life less stressful, and also you are less likely to gain weight, and the weight gain causes other problems. And so yeah, so this study, although it was a really big turning point, and the whole industry of all the diabetes technology really grew, and a lot of that is all really good stuff, but they should have studied it with a low carbohydrate diet, and they probably would have had even better outcomes. Now, I admire Dr. Bernstein a lot. I do not follow his diet. I looked at it again recently, and I would have to not eat a lot of the things I really do enjoy, like fruit. And I may at some point try it. But even the diet I follow, which I would say is only a moderate low carb diet, is significantly beneficial. And I highly recommend it. Taking a look at your diet. And yeah, if this was helpful, if this insight into history here was interesting to you, if you have diabetes or know somebody that has diabetes or just interested in the history of medicine and science, I really appreciate it if you could subscribe and stick around. It really encourages me to create more videos, and seeing the subscribers grow helps this channel grow. Give this a thumbs up, a like as well, And please share. I think we need to make sure we don't forget the history here, and keep learning from history and keep moving forward. Technology, there's still a lot of room for improvement, and also insulin for all. It's unfortunate that not everybody today in the world has access to insulin, despite the high rates of diabetes worldwide. A lot of that is, I mean, type 2 diabetes, yes, is the biggest type of diabetes, but type 1 diabetes, later diabetes, autoimmune diabetes is also growing at a staggering rate, is often misdiagnosed, as it was the case for me. And it really is unfortunate, because what will happen is somebody will be assumed that they have type 2 diabetes. And now today we have a lot of different medications for type 2 diabetes. And often doctors will prescribe these medications and tell them, yeah, exercise more or follow a better diet. Mediterranean diet is one that I hear doctors recommending often, but eat a better diet, exercise, take these pills, and your diabetes should get better. But that is not the truth. That is not what happens if you are misdiagnosed and you actually have a faulty pancreas, an autoimmune condition where your pancreas is being attacked by your own immune system. And did you know there's 100 different autoimmune conditions? That type 1 diabetes is just one of those autoimmune conditions. There's 100 different types, apparently. March is Autoimmune Awareness Month. I just found this out. Also, concurrent autoimmune conditions is common. If you have type 1 diabetes, also having another autoimmune condition, that chance is greater than for somebody who doesn't already have type 1 diabetes. So there are a lot of things going on, and we need testing. We also need more science around individual differences, because the CGMs are so valuable, except it seems like that for some people, some CGMs work well and some don't. So what's going on there, right? We have AI now to help us out. We really need to have uh, a movement for better technology, and in perhaps even a way to prevent or cure diabetes someday. I know they've been talking about a cure for many decades. For now, we're still in the era of forestalling those long-term complications, which does take a lot of self-discipline. It's also expensive, takes commitment. It takes learning yourself and making changes and advocating for yourself too. And because if you're doing all the right stuff and it's still not working out, you could be misdiagnosed. All right. Thank you. Hope you're having a good day.